Hey, welcome to Coffee with Humans Live. This is the first time I'm doing a Coffee with Humans Live. Usually these are about an hour long. Anybody can schedule. You just go to coffeewithhumans.com and we talk about anything. The only rule is no sales calls. And one thing I'm looking forward to doing is taking some of these coffee chats and doing this live around specific topics. And I think meaningful conversations that we've had. And today, a privilege to have Rena Koesler on with me. We had a coffee chat before, and then I said, "Hey, do you want to be even more open and vulnerable and put it online?" She's like, "Yes, I love it." So welcome, Rena.
So here we go.
Exactly. Here we go. And the topic we were talking about were summits. Now, you know a bit about summits. I've been to your website. It's renakoesler.com. I'll throw that banner up here in just a second. But on your website, you've got some mountaineering photos. So you are a true adventurer. You're also a professor, now entrepreneur, and a coach to people. Tell us what brought you to this. What brought you to this place in a nutshell?
To the place of my business?
Yeah, and this idea of summiting.
Yeah. Well, I have a story. Like we all have stories, right? Yeah. And they start usually, well, I shouldn't say usually, but when we're younger. And I was 21. I was on a wilderness course with a group of other college students. And growing up in the Midwest, I'd never seen a mountain before. And we traveled across the country to Wyoming and spent a month in the wilderness backpacking and outdoor cooking and building fires and pitching our tents and fishing. And we got a chance to climb a mountain. I thought, oh, I want to do that. And so it was a group of 4 other students, and we got to the top and it was nearly dark. And by the time we got back down and back to the rest of the group, it was 11:30 at night and 16 degrees, October 1st, 1977. So I woke up the next morning and said to myself, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I didn't know what that meant. I felt it here. And so really throughout my career as a professor and now as a business adventure coach, I really, I want people to go to the next level, put one step in front of the other, sort of the metaphor of what a summit is. So, I've never really moved away from that mentality for either in my own life or the lives of other people. I love watching other people reach their summit.
Yeah.
Whatever they define their summit as.
Well, it's interesting the metaphor when you're describing the summit. You said, "I want to do this for the rest of my life," and you didn't know what it was. You're like, "I felt it here," and isn't that so true? That we know the future, we can see it, but it's hazy, and it's really just filled with hope. It's like, I know there's a path. I'm going to go on that path. I know that it's good, but gosh darn it, I'm not exactly sure what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's interesting. Just a couple of days ago, Jason, I was listening to a podcast in an interview between Steve Harvey. He's the one that was the host of Little Big Shots.
Yeah.
And Family Feud, right? He Mr. Comedian.
Right.
And he was being interviewed by John Maxwell.
Okay.
And he had a very similar story. Had nothing to do with mountains. It had to do with jokes. And I thought, wow, he's telling my story. So he was 27 years old. He was writing jokes for a comedian who was on stage every night of the week. And he was getting $10 for each joke that he wrote for this man. And then he was invited to go to this comedy club, and he'd never been to a comedy club. He didn't even know what it was. And they said that you can actually you can go on stage for free and just, tell jokes. And he's like, oh, well, that'll be fun. and surprisingly, he had an absolutely amazing time. And on the way home, which is about a 40-minute drive, he cried the whole way home. And the woman who was driving said, "What are you crying about?" And he said, "You don't understand. This is what I meant to do." And surprisingly, he sort of discovered his summit
Yeah.
Um, and that spoke volumes to him. The next year he made $3,000. The next year he made $5,000. It wasn't the money. He just wanted to be a comedian.
Yeah. He saw that off in the distance. I remember I did some traveling some time ago and went out west. So I'm in Illinois, and we're heading out west to Colorado area. And I remember that off in the distance, as you approach the Rocky Mountains, off in the distance, it just seems like almost like a smoke or haze on the horizon. And then as you approach it, it becomes more clear, but it's still small, right? And you're like, well, maybe it's a cloud. I don't know. They say they're mountains. Maybe they are, right? And it's not until you take that long journey to the base of that mountain that you really see how remarkably large it is. And so it's like we keep on going. We head in those directions. I think, and our summit, like you're talking about, what we're talking about today, is like how do you reach that summit? And I think it probably begins with what is the summit for me, and how do I recognize it? And it's off in the distance. It always is. It's never just like boom right here. It's something to hope for.
Yeah, that's such a powerful word. I think hope, anyway, right? If we don't have hope, then what do we have, right? So, yeah, it's sort of intangible. Like, a summit is so big and it's so intimidating, and sometimes it seems so far away. Like, how in the world do you ever get to that point? But what if you can't identify it? I mean, you sort of understand that a summit could be a goal, it could be a calling,
Right.
it could be a desire, a really deep desire, which is, much deeper and soulful than a want.
Right.
And it could be, something you haven't discovered yet. You haven't been able to identify. And I love the quote on your site, Jason, by Oscar Wilde.
Oh, okay.
Do you know that one?
Which one are you referring to?
Yeah, it's to live is the rarest thing in the world. Most people exist. That's all.
Yeah.
So they recognize that they haven't reached the summit, but it's okay. I'll just, life is okay. I'm moving along and things are fine. But I think everybody's got a summit, right? Everybody's got a desire, a deep desire. That's not just something you just check off.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that brings meaning and value and just adds to your life like nothing else.
I hear a lot of people, because I have the privilege of talking to a lot of people. I hear a lot of people kind of talk about the opposite. They talk about everybody else, and they say, yeah, I wish I could. I wish I could have that, tenacity. I wish I could have that hope. I wish I could have that. I don't have that. And I want to have empathy for that position, and yet I don't trust those words. I think what people really mean is I'm desirous, right? They don't really mean they don't have it. They just haven't found it yet, and because it's there, right? I mean, that's almost like the qualification of you have something. It's that you're seeking after it, and I feel like it's so important. At least for myself, to keep an eye on what is that thing off in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Move forward. So you talk with a lot of people too. When people are in that position and they haven't yet identified what's important to them or what that summit is for them, what questions do you ask them to help them reason it through?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Different from Steve Harvey and me, it was very spontaneous. Like I wasn't even looking for anything. I was sort of bumbling around like everybody else at 21. Like I was doing what everybody else was doing because that's what people, right? That's what people in my age group do. Until something erupted and I thought, what just happened?
Yeah.
Same thing with Harvey, he was writing jokes for other people. But I think, in coaching, the kinds of questions is like, so what is it that you're really good at? What is it that you really enjoy, you really like? what is it that if you had a dream out there that you would like to accomplish, give me two things you would like to do, and then find the themes among those, and just see what through the questioning, what actually is identified. And eventually, when they narrow it down and they give it some thought, some really good reflective thought, then chances are it will erupt and
Yeah.
it will be unearthed, in another way to put it. So,
Yeah. That whole point of what am I really good at? It reminds me of two conversations I've had recently. One was, I think it was on a seminar the other day. What are you amazing at? And if you ask yourself that question, a lot of people push against it. And they're like, I'm not amazing at anything, as if they can't, as if it's like not being humble enough to say, here's what I'm amazing at. And I think that we need to start thinking about ourselves. I believe we need to start thinking about ourselves as, I'm amazing at something. It's what makes me uniquely me. There's a thread of that through my entire life, right? If we reflect back, there's some sort of thread, and that's that component of me that is amazing. Which doesn't mean I'm not terrible at all sorts of things. That's not the point, right? But we have to be. I think we have to hold ourselves up a bit. Instead of becoming, I don't know, I'm sure certain if the word is despondent, or like that Oscar Wilde quote, like, to go live, it's an assertive action. And I think that when we set our summits and start moving towards something, I think we need to be assertive about that. And it should be like, I'm really good at this. We ought to be able to confidently say that and not feel weird about it, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. You have to be assertive, intentional, like moving in that direction. I think about my nephew years ago. He was such a good skateboarder, like really remarkable skateboarder. And he doesn't skateboard today, but he could have. He could have done something with that skateboard. I really keep going back to that. And, I go back to Steve Harvey too. He was a funny guy. He probably didn't think that he could do anything with being, writing jokes or telling jokes. And certainly I never thought, what am I going to do with climbing mountains? What do you do with that with your life,
Right.
But it's the passion, right? It's the desire that somehow you build something from it, because it's not just about you. It's something that you want to share with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it is super important that we move towards that and identify the thing that we're really great at. Dr. Janice Brooks here on LinkedIn, she said, some people realize their purpose too early to believe it. Here, I'll drop it here. Some people realize their purpose too early to believe it, and others too late to truly live it. Somewhere in the middle is where the help is needed. Help them to build that awareness. And I totally agree. And that idea of coaching, and I don't want to make this all about coaching. Nobody's trying to sell coaching here, but there is something in coaching that if you want better answers, ask better questions.
Yeah.
And we're just remarkably bad at asking ourselves and other people questions that are good.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, we have a lot of assertions based on false assumptions, and rather than questions that then like pull up in ourselves some truth that we need to own, which is like, I'm great at this, or you know what, I'm terrible at this, and then you stop doing it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think too, people, particularly at a young age, you may be identifying something that you think other people see in you or want in you.
Yeah.
Or someone say, you should do this, you should do that, you should do this, you should do that. But oftentimes it requires just asking the right questions, as you said, to the person, so they can be able to identify through the sort of the navigation of the questions, what is it they want to do? Are they doing something or moving in a direction because they're pleasing somebody else, or and I think a lot of young people are sort of caught up in that.
Yeah.
Especially with parents. They want to please parents, and they want to please their spouse, or they want to please, whoever, the world.
Yeah. And I think, this idea of, you touch on young folks, and maybe this is true of other generations as well, but it seems to be that more recent generations are becoming more narcissistic, and making it about my happiness. And instead of understanding that happiness is kind of the payback on the loop of doing something valuable, doing something that I'm, pushing ahead. And sometimes I'm not, quite honestly, not happy about it. There's nothing happy at times in summiting a mountain. Sometimes it's pretty terrible. When the wind is blowing and howling and you wonder, why do I do the things I do?
Right. Mm-hmm.
I've got some friends who they mountaineer together, and their group, they called themselves the the Short Memory Mountaineering Club. Right?
Right.
Because you need a short memory to want to do that again.
Exactly.
But ultimately, there's a huge payoff in happiness and joy and fulfillment, and then there's a huge impact around you as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, and to think that just because you've gotten to the summit doesn't mean you can stay up there. Or it's the only summit there.
Yeah.
It's you got to come down. You have to come down in order to be able to reflect, look at what went well, things that you would do differently in your next climb, your next summit, your next pursuit, your next direction. And I think that's something to consider too.
Yeah.
It's fun to talk about, though. I just, summits come in all shapes and sizes. It doesn't matter how old you are or what you do or where you're from. Everybody has it. It's there. It's there. It's just a matter of discovering it.
What do you say to an older person who may feel like they're on the tail end of even having time or connections or skills or to develop that idea of a summit and then move towards that? Too often I've heard this even from folks close to me who say, well, I just don't know what it is, and my time has sort of passed. And I disagree with that, just like I think you disagree with it. But how do you walk people through that? What do you say?
Yeah, I think one of the things is that people oftentimes don't discover their desire, their summit, until after they retire. Mm. Because I think oftentimes the career that they had, they're thinking about supporting their family, supporting the lifestyle that they want, supporting the things that they had to do for whatever reasons. So there's an obligatory purpose behind oftentimes their career. Not every career, certainly not. But then when they retire, they discover that, painting or woodworking or something. And this is, man, I wish I had known this. This is what I want to do. I'm enjoying it. I'm making crafts and things for other people. I'm giving to other people. I see the value in that. It's never too late. Right?
Yeah. I agree with you. I think there's an opportunity. The word noise comes to my mind, that many times when you're younger, there's a lot of noise. And there's an opportunity at that time to be able to quiet the voices in our heads and quiet our souls for just a moment to reflect, which can help us to find that purpose, which puts us in that time where we've got time to develop that. Mm-hmm. Instead of just letting life happen to us. But then on the tail end of work and raising children and all of these things which consume our consciousness, maybe there's a bit of time for reflection, and it's in that reduced noise level that we can hear our own voice, right? Mm-hmm. It says, hey, this is what you really care about. And maybe some of the things that were fruitless endeavors before, they did not lead to fulfillment. Maybe those are gone. And so we can weed out that noise perhaps a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have some coaching clients now that I think are at the place in their life where they're not having fulfillment in their current career. It's not what they want to do. But I think to a degree, they think, this is too late. I can't go back. I can't start over. I can't. And I'm not in their shoes, and this is not a judgment factor at all, because I can't begin to fulfill somebody else's shoes. But I think, being able to measure where their fulfillment is and making the transition from where they are now, and not to get to the point in their life to look back and say, I shoulda, I coulda, and I woulda. Because who wants to live with that?
Right.
Who wants to live with that kind of regret?
And in that moment, when we have that coulda, shoulda, woulda, do you think that there's still an opportunity I feel like there might be still an opportunity in that, but where we can change. So we can't do it the way we would have done it, but what can we do now? Where can we take that same thread, that same heartbeat, that same passion and desire and assertiveness, and do something with it today? That saying of, when's the best time to plant a tree 20 years ago? When's the second best today? I think there's an element of just, but what now?
Mm-hmm.
But what now?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be cut the cord completely and start over. It could be just a smooth transition, like you begin to dabble in something that you're really passionate about. And then eventually, then it's a matter of just continuing with building where your desire is, or where you have discovered your summit to be. That you can blend the two to a point where you can then leave the one that doesn't give you much fulfillment any longer and move into the area that does.
Yeah.
So it's not either or. It can be both for quite some time, so that you do get fulfillment from one, and that sort of satisfies the area that you're not getting from the other career or job or summit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this idea is, we connected over this idea of summits, just having a coffee chat, and we thought, hey, this is a really good topic. You wrote a book on this. That's how important this topic is to you, and how much you know about this topic. And you do know something about summits, because you've done a lot of physical summits in your life, there's always that metaphor, what happens in the physical world is happening somehow in our spiritual world and our internal being as well.
Mm-hmm.
You learned. Walk us through how'd you get to this idea of writing the book on summits, and what's it called?
Yeah, well, this is the name of the book. It's 15 empowering steps to reach your summit, reach each summit, achieving your potential. So it's really about the 15 chapters, the 15 steps that one methodically takes to get to a summit, whatever you discern your summit to be. And it's starting with first identifying it, whether that's having someone ask you the appropriate questions, or just it's unearthed, just like Steve Harvey and myself, right? And then you move into, now what do you do once you've identified it? Where do you go from there? Well, now you have a vision. What's this going to look like? What does it look like when you're at the top of this peak, at the top of this summit? When you created your own business, or you've created a new podcast, or whatever you decide your summit to be, you have a vision of something. You imagine how you're going to get there. And then you follow the steps, in preparation and planning. And what happens when you get part way and something has happened in life, that gives you a detour, or slows your brakes, or stops and you have to go a different direction. By all means, it hasn't gone away. You just have to keep going for it, right?
Yeah.
All the way to the end, where you can then get to the summit, come back down, reflect on it, and consider where your next summit will be. And it doesn't have to be massive. It doesn't have to be Mount Everest. It could be your Mount Everest. You think about the zillion businesses people have out there. And it doesn't even have to be career oriented, or it could be overcoming an obstacle. Maybe it's substance abuse, or maybe it's, an anger issue. I mean, that's a summit. Maybe it's finances. Maybe it's, something else. So it's about that person identifying what their summit is. And, you know, and I climb summits. I've done quite a few here in Colorado. This last one I did last week, trying to get there before the winter sets in. And you know, it's a big deal out here when you climb 14ers, right? There's a lot of 14,000 foot peaks.
Yep.
And I do it because I gain so much from it. I like the challenge. I like the thought process. I like the focus to move it forward, to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And you're absolutely right, Jason. You get part way up and you think, whose idea was this? I mean, the wind blowing, it's just hard, and you're breathing and your legs are fatigued, and you know, what in the world? But when you get to the top, and I mean, the views are glorious. I mean, any top, you're going to find the views to be glorious because it's the vision that you had, and you see the view is there.
Yeah, I started rock climbing a number of years ago, and I tell this story to anybody who wants to listen. But I started rock climbing because I was afraid of heights, and I thought if two people are standing on the edge of a cliff, and one person is afraid and the other person isn't, what's the difference? The two are in the same circumstances, and I thought, well, there must be something that the person who is afraid doesn't know, that the person who's not afraid must know. So I thought, well, if I'm afraid, I got to go find the person who's not afraid and figure out what they know. And it worked. And I started learning rock climb. Well, in rock climbing, this for our listeners, in rock climbing, you can either top rope or you can lead climb. And so if you top rope, the rope is always up at the top and you're climbing. And so if you fall, you fall basically whatever rope stretch is there, right? It's not a fall. It's it's soft and it's nice. And that anchor up top is very, very firm. But I started lead climbing, where as you go up the mountain or the rock, right, you put in anchors, and then you pass the anchor. You pass your safety, and then you put in another one, and then you go beyond that. And so if you fall however far up you are above the anchor, plus the same amount down, and rope stretch. And it messes with your mind to climb above the anchor, because you intuitively know that you were above safety. And worse yet, I'm the one who put the anchor in. And I feel like, oh no, am I any good at putting that anchor in? Did I put it in? Is it my fault? If it pops out, is my failing? Is it the failing of the rock I had it in? Like, I might die. And it messes with your mind. And at that point in time, you can't go down. It's difficult, maybe even unsafe to go backwards. So you just got to keep going. And you put a lot of trust in wherever you came from, whatever your experiences you had, along with technical skills, to just keep moving through, because it's the only reasonable answer.
Yeah.
You can't just call to your friend, if you're top roping, you can call your friend and say, hey, I'm getting off. And they're like, okay, I got you. And you lower slowly. But that's not life. Yeah. Life isn't just like, hey, I'm tapping out for a minute. Hold on. I'm going to wait here for just a second while you hold me, and then I'll continue on. It's not. You just keep going.
That's a great example, because it's about second guessing, right? the second time when you're lead climbing, you're way out of your comfort zone, or out of that safety net, right? So that's where growth happens. That's when you're in that uncomfortable situation, and then you get above it, and you're like, you're really pleased with yourself because you put that anchor in really well.
Right.
I knew what I was doing, right? So it's all those things. We all have those limiting beliefs that pop up all the time. And we second guess ourselves. We wonder, can we really do this? We're not making much progress. We're not, we all have it. We're humans, right? Human chats. It's how to overcome those and just keep putting one foot in front of the other to that, whatever that desire is. Because you realize when you get to that point that it enhances your self-esteem. You feel pretty good about what you've followed through with what you said you were going to do. And, you can't doubt that. And then it just gives you that much more fuel for the next desire or summit that you want to shoot for.
Yeah. Oh boy, this is a good discussion. Well, we're going to do a couple more of these. talking about summits and using our experiences and the skill sets that we've got to just make the world a better place. That's what Coffee with Humans is all about. And again, I'm super excited to have my friend Rena Koesler on. You want to hold up your book again for those folks who want to find it? You can find that at Amazon. Your Amazing Itty Bitty, Achieving Your Potential, 15 Empowering Steps to Reaching Each Summit. And again, she's an expert on summits. She does them all the time. And you can go to her website. I'll throw that up there again as we close, renakoesler.com. If you want to have coffee with me, the only rule is no sales calls. So we can have coffee. You can just go to coffeewithhumans.com. I'm happy to chat with you and get to know you. But this is Coffee with Humans Live. And I'm throwing my pen around too. Like I have this issue holding it. But this is Coffee with Humans Live. Super excited to have you on, Rena. Thanks so much to all our listeners. We'll see you on our next episode.
Okay, you bet. I enjoy it.